Hey there, are you grieving the potential loss of a loved one or feeling overwhelmed with the loss of someone you care about? If so, you're in the right place. Lisa Hartung here, and this podcast is designed to guide you through topics surrounding death and dying. We'll dive into multifaceted aspects of grief, offering you a blend of personal stories, expert insights, and practical advice for your grief journey. May this be a safe space for you to learn, listen, and ask questions about your own life and loved ones. So grab your favorite beverage and let's dive in. Welcome, everyone. Today's guests are two of my very favorite people. They are very near and dear to my heart. We've known each other for years as neighbors in Maine. We've played many a Rummy Cub game together. And these two have been a lifeline for our family and know all too well what it is like to lose a loved one to cancer and cancer complications. Their story is unique, and I hope that it shows you how life has many different chapters. We originally filmed this episode in November of 2023, and it was special because it was the first ever Giving Grief Grace interview. So without further ado, I am super excited to introduce you to Deanne Lavallee and Russell Charette. Enjoy. We're so excited to chat with you both today. I've really been wanting to interview you for a while because I think you have a really unique story. It's unique because you both have walked the road of being caregivers for your spouse of many years and have then transitioned to their passing and then what happens after your loved one passes. And so you both have been able to find kind of a second wind, if you will, and love after loss. And I think that that's something that a lot of our listeners struggle with. So I would love for you both to introduce yourselves and then just tell us a little bit about your story and your loved one, and then we can dive into the details.
I'm Deanne Lavallee, and I dated my husband from 8th grade until after we both graduated with associate degrees from college. We were married and we had 3 children. And when he was 46 and we'd been married 27 years, he was diagnosed with terminal cancer. He lived for 3.5 years and was sick most of that time. So I was his caretaker for that time. He was a great patient. He never lost his sense of humor. And he would tease the kids about, you wouldn't deny your cancer-ridden father of an ice cream, would you? So we called it playing the cancer card. And he passed, and it was way too long for him to have been sick. He said to me one day, I'm so tired of doing things for the last time. It was a relief to me at first. And because obviously I was getting exhausted, but it didn't take long for me to realize that I was in a totally different and unknown space. I had never lived alone in my life. I was 51 years old. It was very, very different and scary and lonely.
Yeah. And how long did you live alone before cohabitating with
4 years.
with our friend?
4 years.
4 years. Yeah.
Cohabitate.
4 years. I think in your generation, I'm hearing a lot of that dated in high school and married and now in midlife, there's a whole new chapter of life and what do you do after that? So thank you, Deanne. We'll let Russ introduce himself and tell us about your story.
Hi, I'm Russell Charette. I met my wife in college after a failed engagement. And I purchased tickets to like a prom type dance at the college. Being the consummate money saver, I didn't want those tickets to go to waste. So I actually asked my wife, future wife at the time, out to go on this date, and she agreed. She was actually dating somebody at the time. I knew him and I asked her out. She was a safe date. And actually we hit it off very much so. I don't know why, but from there we were together almost constantly. I lived with her parents and her for a year. And then we got married. So we were together. Actually, Dan and Tom and Pete and I were married a week apart in 1976 on a Friday
Oh my
evening,
gosh.
which in that time frame was unusual to get married on a Friday. So
And you both got married on Fridays?
Mhm.
yes,
A week apart.
a week apart. My wife had cancer 3 times.
Mm.
She had breast cancer. And they say after 5 years, you're supposed to be safe. I don't believe that.
Mm.
She had uterine cancer from the tamoxifen,
Mhm.
which they can cure. They take your uterus out. And then 7 years after her initial cancer, the cancer came back
Mm.
and it spread.
Mm.
She actually passed from a blood clot. It went to her lungs. We took her to the ER and lost her.
And in her total, so she had cancer and then 7 years later it came back. So the total time of being a caregiver is over 7 years.
Well, I mean, after her first treatment stuff,
Mhm.
she had, quite a few years of good time. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
but this, when it came back, it kind of came back with a vengeance and a little bit more difficult. And she did go relatively quickly. The oncologist actually called me and said that it was better that she passed this way instead of what was ahead of her.
It's-
Her writing was infected, the cancer had spread to her brain. So
Mm. It's just such a.
she had to retire and get done
Mm.
her job.
Mhm.
After she retired, she passed, I think, within a month
Wow. Yeah.
from the blood clots. We had 35 years together.
Yeah.
So
And you have children.
we have children. We'll let Deanne explain her children.
We had 3 children at the time he passed and one grandson who was named after his grandfather.
Oh.
I could not have done it for that length of time without my kids. They were there whenever I needed them. If I didn't even know I needed them, they really put their lives on hold. My son Vinny didn't buy a house because he lived in New York. He didn't want that distraction while his dad was sick.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And was he commuting back and
yes,
forth? Mhm.
yeah.
How old were your children at the time of
When
Tom's
Tom
passing?
was diagnosed, Michelle was 21.
So your
and-
youngest daughter was 21.
Yeah, Vinny was 23 and Karen was 25.
And then he lived 3.5 years after that. And then Russ, when your wife Petey was sick, how old at that second time, how old were your children?
She passed in 2009. Both of my children were born in 1981. So 28. So they would have been both around 28.
Mm.
Amy Jean, my daughter, was born in January and my son Joseph was born in November. After Joseph was born, Petey told me, either you're going to fix this or
2 kids in 1 year. You had to make light of it, right? So you both had kids in their 20s, late 20s, mid-late. Were they helping with caregiving at all, or were you the primary caregiver?
I was the primary caregiver. I mean, Joe was not living at home. Amy Jean was still living at home at that point in time,
Mhm.
but she had a full-time job and was working.
And Joe was in California.
And Joe was in California.
So
Mm.
hard to come back.
Yeah.
And what about for you, Deanne?
They helped a lot.
Yeah.
They helped with everything, transportation
Mhm.
to Boston
Mhm.
and staying overnight, doing housework and laundry and keeping me fed.
Yeah, I think that's something that when you get the diagnosis, there's so much more than the treatments, right? It's getting to and from, it's the meals, it's the mental well-being, the family time, and really making the moments matter. So thank you both for sharing that, your journey. And so with their passing, I know Deanne waited 4 years after her husband Tom had passed. How long were you, Russ? How long was it from Petey's passing to?
Actually, Pete and I didn't know that Tom had passed, which is unusual because, I mean, we knew Deanne and Tom and Pete and I were actually acquaintances, close friends. I was his Cub Scout leader when he was young. Tom was Joe's basketball coach. The kids were they were all in the church, same church.
So you had known each other for a number of years,
Right.
kind of in similar circles.
Right.
In terms of the time after Petey passed, Deanne came over after she saw one of the things she likes to do is read obituaries, which I don't know why, but anyway.
You know, my dad likes to read
Mhm.
obituaries
So-
too.
So she came over with a casserole after the obituary was published, and she said whatever. She gave me her phone number, said call if you need anything, and
It's so wonderful to have someone that has also walked
Mm.
that road be a support for you in that time.
Well, that
So-
first night, we talked for like 2.5, 3 hours, reiterating our journeys and comparing and
then
empathizing with each other.
3 months later, I called her up, and she didn't understand how I still had her phone numbers. Evidently, I kept it. Uh,
Were you waiting for a call sooner than that, Deanne?
No, actually not. I knew he would need some time.
So we went to a restaurant, and I proceeded to leave my credit card there.
Ah,
Which he had never done in his life. I think
Yeah.
I had him rattled.
And then the second restaurant I took her to, I left my credit card there.
you did it.
I did.
Well, neither one of us had dated for over 30 years.
Well, that's right. And
So-
And I actually had never dated other than Tom, so, it was a
Mhm.
whole new ball game, dating as an adult.
right.
But one of the things that both of our spouses had told us is that we needed to find somebody, because they both knew that we couldn't live apart, live alone. So,
Yeah,
Almost the exact same words.
really.
you need to find somebody else.
Mhm.
Is that, yeah. I think that's so selfless, right? To the patient themselves to say, okay, I know that my time here is limited, but I want my beloved to be able to share love with
Mhm.
others.
Mm.
Life is meant to be shared in whatever capacity that means for the individual. I think that leaves the door open, right? For
Mhm.
you to not feel as guilty, I guess,
Right.
moving forward.
And I think in my circumstance, I think it was good for our kids to know that that's how he felt.
Mhm. Did he share that with the kids before he
With the
passed?
kids and with his mother.
Oh,
Yes.
so a word
His-
for
His mother was interesting because she didn't want to, I never met her.
Mhm.
Deanne wanted to introduce me to her, but
Because I knew she'd fall in love with him as soon as she saw him.
anyways, I met his mother at her funeral. His Tom's sister said, I want you to introduce you to my mother. A little bit of humor there.
So
Anyway,
you met Tom's mom at the funeral, and she was a lovely lady, huh?
she very quiet.
Oh gosh.
So
So they both, and then Petey had said, did she share with the kids that she was okay with you moving on, Russ?
I don't recall that. It's possible she might have told Amy Jean. Joe was in California, but when she passed, she went with the blood cloth. And it's kind of a blur, but in terms of treatment and stuff, it was, probably 6 months, 8 months before she threw that blood cloth, and I really didn't expect her to pass.
Yeah,
You're
right.
not ready for So, I mean, I know Deanne's journey was different. I was really still at times feel that we should have had more time with her.
Right, because you never think that she's gonna pass of something
Other
quick,
than, right,
instantaneous. It's
Yeah.
gonna be a slow, painful, end of life.
Yep.
And you two built the camp or the house that we're in together, right?
We started this in 2006. We built my brother-in-law's place next door
Mhm.
first, which was a log cabin kitten, which was a lot of work because the process was so easy with the town. And I knew that the ordinances would change. We decided to replace our cottage and built this one. And we started in 06 and we had to put her on hold because she had a second bout of cancer, uterine cancer from tamoxifen. She actually stayed here one night.
Mm,
It wasn't done, but it was enough. The bathroom was in and,
It was warm enough.
oh, yes. Yeah,
Maine in the winter can be quite cold.
yeah. But, after she passed, I threw myself into my work
Mm,
and finishing this place, just something to keep my mind busy. So I spent a lot of time at work,
mhm.
which was easy to do.
I find that when we go through such an incredible life event, that everyone reacts a bit differently. Throwing oneself into work is a coping mechanism. Do you find that that was helpful for you? Now, in hindsight, looking back and saying,
It was,
would you do it differently if you were doing it again?
I don't know how I would have done it.
Yeah. I'm the same way. I'm like, let's get to work. Something
Yeah.
to keep your mind off of it.
Exactly.
Mhm.
That was it.
Yeah.
My work was such that I could be busy with my mind and not think about it. So,
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then in terms of the house, so you were living in a different house, and then once PD passed, were you thinking, okay, I need to close this chapter of my life and move out to the
Nope.
lake house?
Nope, we lived in Gardner. Deanne lived in Gardner also, obviously with our children growing up, pretty much in the same realm. We didn't sell a house in Gardner. I asked Deanne to move in,
This
which,
is a big step, so let's examine that. So 3 months after PD passed, you called Deanne and said,
Yeah.
let's go out to dinner. And then you continued going out to dinner and
Yeah.
forgetting your credit card.
Yeah. And we dated all that winter and spring and summer, and then the holiday weekend in October, he asked me if I would like to move in, and I said absolutely. I'd been alone long enough.
Yeah, it's
and then she sprung on me that she wanted to sell her place and that.
and then you're like, oh, okay, this is the real deal here.
It was a real deal anyways, but you have, I don't know what it was, a mindset
Right,
really was a commitment then.
right. Yeah, because
I
then she
told her
would
you're
be
gonna,
homeless
you're
if
gonna,
anything
you're gonna
happened.
sell your place.
I said, well, it's kind of an expensive storage unit.
So she did, and
We've been together ever since, 13 years
yeah.
and counting.
Wow.
And
Isn't
then
that
we
incredible?
decided to retire in 2016.
50.
I'm sorry, 15. And for me, I thought that was a little bit early because, I mean, my work was everything really. So,
mhm.
and one of the reasons I decided to retire, what I thought was early, at 62, was I really thought I probably should work more, but I lost Petey, and because Deanne lost Tom, I figured it'd be better to retire when I still had some life let
Right.
into me in time to do things and
Yes.
travel, and which we've done a bit. Not as much as we probably should have, but
Hey, we're still young, right?
still
Mhm.
Still
Yeah.
time.
I still have some plans.
that's what worries me.
So you moved into the house in,
Gardner.
Deanne moved into Russ's house in Gardner,
Mhm,
sold your house,
mhm.
and was that the house that the children grew up in
No, I had moved out of there, and
after Tom's passing?
after Tom's passed, he and I had talked about it, and he wanted me to sell the house, because we had intended to sell the house.
And
'Cause we had
downsize.
all kinds of after kids plans,
Uh-huh.
and that was part of it. So he said, you know, you need to, because it was an old house, it always needed something, and
Mm-hmm.
so I did, and I moved into an apartment, which I was very happy with, but then the apartment complex wanted me to move into a 1-bedroom, and my oldest daughter said, Mom, you've left a 10-room house to a 2-bedroom apartment.
Yeah.
You can't go any smaller.
Yeah.
So then I started looking for a mobile home, which I found. And I moved into there. In the 4 years after Tom passed, I moved 4 times, which was
Ooh.
4 times as many as I had moved in my entire life.
Right. Wow.
So,
And just a move is emotionally draining and physically draining. So,
because every time you move, you have to discard some of your
right. Your belongings.
memories.
Yeah. And that's hard
Mhm.
within itself. Mm. So the final move, or not the final move, because then you moved to Russ's house in
House.
Gardner. And then how long did you live in the house in Gardner before moving out to the lake?
We moved here after we retired.
We sold the
Sold
house
the
in
house and,
2000
yeah.
for 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We lived in both places. We lived here in the summer
And then
lived
there in the winter.
yeah.
And then you said,
because we were still
Basically.
working,
ah,
and
that
it was
makes sense.
difficult to get out of here
Mhm.
dependably in the winter.
Mhm.
So,
You know, it's a dirt road, so you never know
mhm.
how the main weather is going to affect that. It's private also, so.
Mhm.
Yeah. Wow. And as you were moving in together, how did your children, like, how did you introduce this concept of dating someone else to your children?
Well, I can say that my kids expected it. They were looking for me.
Did they set you up on online dating?
No, I did, but I pass it by them when I thought somebody was decent. But they were all for it.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, my oldest daughter, somebody said to her, well, I was thinking about my brother for your mother, but the age difference is a little bit. And my daughter says, well, does he have a summer home?
Ah!
She said, age is not a priority. She married for love the first time. But having said that, she was the one who had the hardest time. And I think she obviously thought a lot of Russ right from the beginning, but it was harder for her to separate her loyalty to her dad
Yeah.
and to engage and, you know, encompass Russ at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But over the years, she has come to it very well and loves Russ to death. And her oldest son, who was born, you know, he was 20 months old when Tom passed. He called Russ last Father's Day and said to him, Russ, we know you're not our biological grandfather, but you've been the best grandfather we could ask for. Can't get better than that.
No.
I actually knew that Karen,
That's
Happy-
Deanne's eldest daughter.
yes, Karen, Deanne's eldest daughter, has accepted me when they sold her house and we were in Florida and they actually had to move in here.
Into the summer
Into,
house,
into
your
this
summer
cottage here, yeah.
Mhm.
In the winter time. And when we got back from Florida, Karen had rearranged our family photos and merged the 2 families. So
That's so sweet because you both had your
sections on the wall.
here's the Charettes, and here's the
Well, I
Lavallees.
mean, we had pictures of marriage, the wedding pictures of Deanne and Tom, and Petey's snap pictures are on the wall.
Mhm.
And Karen just merged the 2 families. So,
Isn't that so sweet?
Mhm.
so yeah, I just told my children that I was dating Deanne. So
There's no ease in there. It's just said.
this is it. Yeah. So
But they were
But
very
they-
accepting,
yeah.
considering how quick it was in a sense.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
of course, Joe was still in California, and the first time he came home after his mom passed, I was already on the scene. But he gave me the nicest hug and said, thank you for taking care of my dad.
Yeah.
my niece actually told Deanne, Mark's, my brother-in-law, and my sister-in-law, Amy,
Mhm.
my
And that
daughter,
was Petey's.
Sibling.
sister.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Amy Jean is actually named after her aunt Amy and Uncle Gene, so.
So
But
that would have
her,
been your daughters named after
her
your late wife's
sister
sisters.
and husband,
Okay.
his name is Eugene. So-
Ah,
So, but anyways, her daughter told Deanne, thank you for saving my Uncle Russ.
mm.
So I'd lost 50 pounds.
And you were working all the time, so you
Mhm.
weren't thinking about eating,
Yeah.
right? You were
Yeah.
living alone
Yeah.
and
Not for long. So, yeah,
Deanne's a really good cook for anyone listening, so I think
she is, yes.
that was wonderful. So one thing that I've personally been going through after losing my mom is cleaning out all of her things, both at my parents' winter home and their summer home. And so Deanne, after moving so many times and like cleaning out, and Russ after downsizing from 2 homes to 1,
I miss my garage.
how was that? Not only moving, but going through your loved ones' things. And what was your thought process in that experience? Because it's almost like you're reliving the memories every time
It's
you go through
difficult.
them. And it's so painful, right?
It is.
Was there like a method that you used to go through it, or?
Well, we were fortunate in that my daughter's daycare's husband was the same size as my husband. So Karen, my oldest daughter, she went through his stuff and took anything that Terry could use to him immediately, which is what Tom would have wanted. And I wanted as well. And then I had created a memory box for Tom out of an old box that tools came in. And we put all his stuff from his illness in that box, cards that he had gotten by the hundreds and his CPAP machine and
Gosh.
all that stuff is in this box. It's at my daughter Karen's. So the other stuff that I had to go through was, memorabilia, and you just have to get hard into it. That's all. Can't keep everything. And especially when we moved in 2015, luckily this was pretty much empty.
Because you hadn't lived in
He
it.
hadn't really
Right.
lived in it. I was able to bring a lot of my furniture and special furniture here. So that was kind of nice. And with 3 kids, they took quite a few things too that had
Mhm.
memories.
Pieces of furniture.
Pieces of furniture. Tom had a Santa's village with 30 plus houses.
Oh, wow.
And the kids divided it up. Everybody got the house that they particularly wanted, and they put them up every year. Actually, Karen already has hers up. So that was a huge thing. It was difficult sorting through the stuff, trying to decide what little pieces you would keep and what you would pass on or.
And did you find that their relatives that have passed there was stuff like my mom has stuff from her great grandmother and from her mom.
So for me, it was difficult, and Deanne helped a lot, helped me to rehome some of Petey's stuff.
Yeah.
But when we
Repurpose.
retired in 2015, there was a lot of family heirlooms from Petey's family, and it predicated a road trip to California with a U-Haul trailer. Because my son lived in California. Amy Jean
Your daughter
lived with me. She finished upstairs in the garage, and I told her that I was going to sell the house. She was going to kick me out. I said, no, I'm selling the house. So, but that, and she'd been saving. She was very, very frugal, saving up. So
In 2014.
in 2014, it allowed us to go looking for a place for her. And when we sold the house, she had a house in South Portland, so we divided up the family heirlooms between Amy Jean's house and Joseph in California, who was married and had a daughter, so we have 8 grandchildren, most of them from Deanne, 1 from me. So anyway, so we had a road trip to California, which was interesting.
Oh my
So,
goodness, with a U-Haul
With a
full of
U-Haul.
family heirlooms.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
But how special is that for your son, Joe, like to have that memory of life in Maine?
so you talked about Emily, your mother's grandmother's stuff. There was a blanket chest that my father-in-law had made when he was in high school.
Oh my gosh.
So Joe has that. It was a 4-bedroom house with a finished upstairs in the garage in Gardner. So really had to downsize.
Mhm.
Here we had some of Deanne's furniture here.
But it's a process. I mean,
Yeah.
how long did it take you to,
Divest,
yeah,
about a year.
yeah.
But it was helpful because as he said, Amy Gina just bought her new house, and so she used a lot of the furniture, like the living room furniture, the dining room table and chairs, and so that was very, very helpful because we didn't have to make a decision to put it on the front lawn,
Right. And then you kind of feel like, oh,
Right.
I'm not honoring my,
Yeah. And
The-
the table and
yeah.
chairs actually was her grandmother's,
oh, isn't that special?
that she had saved up for years to be able to purchase back in the day.
Oh,
And this table and chairs are the chairs and table that I had in my family when I was 5 years old.
no way.
Mm.
Oh, that's just so wonderful, right? And
Mm.
so special to be able to have literally a lifetime of memories and with certain pieces of furniture. You've been successful in downsizing, in finding.
Well, wait a minute. Deanne brings stuff in and I say, okay, what's leaving?
One in, one out. My husband always says that when I
Mm.
go shopping, find a new outfit.
Have to sneak that in there.
One in, one out. Mhm,
Mhm.
mhm. Well, when you have limited space,
Yeah.
you know that's,
It keeps us honest.
yeah, right. But I really struggle with it. Well, they all bring joy to me. So I
Mhm.
want to keep them all and they all serve a purpose. So well, why do I need to get rid of them?
Mm.
But there is only so much space, right?
Mhm.
So I think that's something that just Americans in general have too much stuff.
Mhm.
So it's good
That's
to
why
do
our land is dotted with storage units.
that. Yes.
People can't make a decision.
Yeah, or well, it's the meaningful table that
Mhm.
you've had for, in generations. So thinking about, how was it for both of you to allow yourselves to be in a loving relationship after having been with your first spouse for so long and everything is new, right? In this new relationship and can be awkward and uncomfortable because you're like, I don't know what dating looks like. And I hear that a lot from the community. And so
Deanne can share a story about a date that she went on and Vinny called.
your son. Yeah.
Deanne's son called Karen, her
Right.
eldest, and said, Mom is where? Go ahead.
The girls at my office had set me up with an attorney from Portland, and
Did he
my-
have a summer house?
no, he did not.
Okay.
And my son was not happy about it because my daughter didn't have any idea where I was or who I was with. And she had to talk him off the ledge because he was threatening to come home right that very minute from New York to find me.
Mom has gone missing. She's not picking
So
up my phone
another
calls.
reason they were so delighted when I started dating Russ, because they all knew him in some capacity and thought he was safe. And
Little did
unbeknownst,
they know.
unbeknownst to me, but he had a summer home.
Plus
All the
one.
boxes checked. But I think our relationship, the beginning was pretty seamless because we had both come from good marriages.
Yeah.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
we both had lost our spouses. I think it would be different if he had been divorced or if I had been divorced, because then there's a little bit of friction there with your ex.
Mhm.
And we didn't have that.
Mhm.
And it has also allowed us to still continue to love and grieve
Mhm.
our spouses.
Mhm.
It's been very
But It
comfortable.
also allows you to understand the grief.
Right, because you
So-
both have walked that path and felt deep, deep sorrow and
And there are triggers,
Mhm.
you know.
So,
Stuff that,
and you both know what each other's triggers are, and so you can be
Mm.
there as a support. And how do you navigate still honoring your previous love in today's day-to-day?
We talk about them all the time. My husband's sister said to me one day, I have never met a couple on their second marriage that talks about their former spouses as much as you and Russ do. She said, actually, I find it kind of refreshing.
Yeah.
And I said, well, it's just normal. It's just comfortable. It's just who
Mhm.
we are and where we are.
Well, I mean, they were part of your life for so long, right?
Mhm.
And
It's interesting, Deanne had a bunch of films that she hadn't developed. And Michelle, her youngest, decided to develop those films. So Michelle comes in the door and Gardner, my daughter Amy Jean is there. The first picture she takes out of the envelope is a picture of Vinny, Joe, and Amy Jean.
And Michelle.
both of your
And-
sons
and
and
Michelle.
daughters.
Yeah. They're together in a photograph at the church. They were in the choir. And it sets you
Michelle
right
said,
back.
this is making the hair stand up on my arms. And Amy Jean said, I think this was in the works before any of us knew about it.
Yeah, I have goosebumps.
Mm.
Just thinking about how, your stories intertwine,
Mhm.
and we ourselves never know what the future holds, but sometimes I wonder who's pulling strings for
Right.
us, right?
Right.
It's true.
Yeah. We've always thought that Petey and Tom were involved.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And getting you together and.
Yeah. And making it so seamless.
Mm-hmm. And how are holidays with you both having children and
Pretty busy.
At first, it was a little tricky. I remember the first Easter, my kids went to their aunts and uncles, my husband's families.
Mm,
But I felt I needed to stay with Russ because his mother-in-law was still living.
mm.
And they always did Easter, all the holidays with her. So I did. And it was a bit lonely,
Mm-hmm.
but we made it through and I did what I felt I needed to do. It's ironed itself out now. The kids are older than, and we kind of just do.
You ever
our thing.
do melded holidays?
We did once for Thanksgiving and it was a bit of a disaster.
Okay, yep.
It's just too many.
I must have blocked them.
It was just too, there's lots of people in both families, so it was just too much.
Yes.
And that was my
lots-
younger daughter who
Instigated it, or-
instigated that. Yeah, I think she thought it would be divine, but not so much.
Lots of people, yes. I remember Deanne inviting me over to her brother's house for a little family gathering.
Uh-huh.
So I drive up to David's, her brother's house, and I look in the yard and there's like 15 cars there.
A little family gathering.
Deanne says you didn't turn around. Yeah, I should have turned around. Anyway, so.
Because Deanne, you're one of
5.
5 and Russ is one of
Originally 7, yeah, 7
So-
kids.
7 kids, right?
Yep.
So you're both from big families.
Mhm.
And I wonder if, because you're both from larger families, that it was more seamless for you because you're used to having other people around,
Mhm.
right? And being more hanging out with one another. I
Mhm.
think it's different for kids who are just a single child, or, maybe just have one sibling, that if they're going through grieving, it might be a little different.
Mhm.
Great that you were both able to integrate into each other's family. And was it hard introducing one another to your siblings?
No. My siblings would take him over me.
Ah!
I don't know about that. but
And my father, of course, they're both from the county, my father and Russ.
Uh-huh.
Like
The
in this-
county in Maine. that's
Yes,
what we
the
call
county in
northern
Maine and almost
coastline.
exactly the same town.
Uh-huh.
And
Okay.
so my father
Kindred
thought
spirits.
yes, and he would always say to me, whenever they came to visit and they were getting, you gotta take care of him, always, gotta take care of him. But at the same
So what
time,
happened?
he was
Yes.
very helpful, outgoing, willing to do anything for any and all of my family,
My siblings were dispersed throughout
the
Mhm.
the
country.
US, so, I mean, I'm the last one in Maine. They were-
There weren't that many family gatherings, really. but-
Right,
But we've been to a few.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a family reunion here with most of my siblings.
That was before I had moved in, and I found out that my place was to be the cook.
Oh, okay.
That was my older sister who said. I didn't say that. did I?
No, you didn't. Nobody, it's getting toward lunchtime and and I just wasn't comfortable taking that lead, but it was very obvious that I needed to. So.
Even though you hadn't moved in, you were
Right.
still the lady of the house.
Mhm.
Things are going well now, and
Very well.
I'm always in such awe of how you've been able to both honor your loved ones and, like you said, talk about them all the time. I think that keeps them alive, right?
Mhm, absolutely. And
Absolutely.
for the grandchildren too.
Yeah, to hear those stories
Yeah.
and to be able to,
Yeah.
think about.
And that's why they don't call Russ Grampy, because Grampy is their grandfather Tom. But so they call him Russie.
Yes. So special.
Yeah. So
And what do Russ's children call you?
Gramsy.
Gramsy and Russie. I love it. It's so perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for chatting today. I think I'd like to close with any advice that you would give to someone who has recently lost a spouse, and how should they navigate that, or what's one thing to keep in mind as they're going through this next.
My biggest
phase.
advice would be give yourself some time and space.
That's interesting because take your time.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say.
Really.
And don't be afraid to take the first step, or, welcome this first step.
Mm-hmm.
The memories are the best.
Mhm,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just remember and talk.
mhm.
And talk about it with.
I will say that my husband's been gone 17 years,
Mm.
and I love him today probably more than I did when he left. It's never ending, and I love this guy.
Yeah.
Oh, your bridges.
So you can love more than one person.
Yeah, I think your love expands, right?
Right.
I hear a lot of moms who have one child that say, I don't know if I'm able to love another child as much. And you just realize how much, that there is.
It's infinity.
Yeah. And, it's wonderful to be able to love again. And
It's okay to continue to talk to your spouses.
right. And I think
And
it's
we
part
do
of the grieving process,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
The healing process. And, they're never truly gone,
Correct.
right? And they show up in really unique and special ways
Mhm.
throughout our lives, which I think brings me joy, is to know they're never fully gone.
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
well, thank you both for your time. I greatly appreciate it, and I think that your stories will help others be able to step into that fear of the unknown. And I'm sure that there are some funny stories of dating Deanne that we didn't share on today's podcast. Maybe that's a follow-up one.
Oh, I have stories.
Of other people that came before
Russ, yes. Yeah.
the Russ and Deanne that we know today, but
There was some pretty funny stories pre-Russ.
but you just got to try, because you
Mhm.
don't know unless you try.
Correct.
And I think that so many people are crippled by the fear of the unknown that they don't want to try. But there's so much love in life. Like, think about where you would be today if you hadn't taken that step.
I think about that all the time.
Like,
What would my life be like without
Mhm.
Russ?
You just have such a beautiful life together, and you're so ingrained in each other's families, and
Mhm.
you never miss a beat, and you're going all the time.
Yes, we are. Gonna hit the slow
So,
button once in a while.
Yeah, let's slow down a little bit. Enjoy the coffee, enjoy the views. Oh, well, thank
But
you.
thank you, Lisa, for
Yeah,
And we miss your
hearing our
mom.
story.
yeah.
We do miss your mom.
She's with us every day.
She
We'll
is.
see a bald eagle sometime.
Yeah.
Mm,
So-
And I heard the owl this morning.
Oh,
We did.
she's coming in.
Yeah.
Oh, well, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode of Giving Grief Grace. If you found the content interesting and think it could help a friend or a loved one, please share it with them. Subscribe to this podcast and get a weekly dose of positivity. And while you're at it, please leave a review. If you enjoyed the show and want to support me financially on my grief journey, I'm raising funds for Project Purple, a nonprofit whose mission is to see a world without pancreatic cancer. I'm doing this by running the New York City Marathon in November 2025, and I'll leave a link to my fundraising page in the show notes. If you've lost a loved one and are looking for support in an online community, consider joining our free private Facebook group, Giving Grief Grace. May you be kind to yourself in the week ahead and give yourself grace. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.